everyone, welcome to another Good Ride review. In this review we are talking about a brand new model from Never Summer for the 2024-2025 winter season. This is the Breezy Rider. So this Breezy Rider comes with Never Summer's triple camber profile, and it comes with a medium flex. Now it's a medium flex that's a little bit snappy when you want it to be, but it's also butterable as well. So this board is an asymmetrical twin. That means there's a specific heel side, as you can see here, heel side, and a toe side. So the heel side is going to have a little bit of a deeper side cut than the toe side, bringing a bit more symmetry to your riding. So the Breezy Rider comes in a few different sizes. You can get a 142, 145, 148, and a 150. So the smallest size comes with a 240 millimeter waist width, which is slightly on the wider side. It's not a mid-wide board, but it is a little bit wider than your average women's board in this size. Here's a look at the base. It does come with Never Summer's DuraSurf sintered base. I was able to ride this a few different times in a few different snow conditions. I got it midwinter, so it was kind of firm conditions out, some real midwinter snow, and just today I rode it in some little bit of softer spring snow, but also some icy, harder snow too. And the overall personality of this board is that true twin rider. If you are looking for a playful park board that's also very snappy and energetic, this is a good board for that. It has a strong personality to where it is snappy, it is precise, it has a ton of edge hold, but if you pressure it outside of the camber zones, it becomes a playful ride. So you can butter it if you want. You can play on boxes and rails, and it feels pretty playful, but it's also reliable and stable. Let's talk about the camber profile. You can see there are 3 positive camber zones. There's one right in between the feet, and then there's one underneath each foot. And it also has early rise on the tip and the tail. So you get early rise, and then it comes to a positive camber zone here, down to rocker, positive camber, down to rocker, positive camber, down to early rise over here. And the interesting thing about the triple camber is it changes a bit the way it rides. If you were to compare it to the normal hybrid rocker profiles that Never Summer has, that mid-break in the board where you normally would have a rocker zone in between the feet, if you're riding one of those boards, that becomes the flexing point. If you're going to butter it or twist it, it becomes very twistable as well. And this extra camber zone almost adds a bit of stability, and it takes away that really twistable feel. So it becomes more of a true camber feel underfoot, where it feels a bit stiffer, it's a bit more responsive, becomes very precise, and it has really, really good edge hold. But the cool part is once, like when I was buttering it and stuff, if I had my weight in between my feet here, it felt quite stiff. But if I got from here out to leverage it, there was a certain point about here where it just goes whoop, and it starts bending. So it has a little bit of a different feel than your normal hybrid rocker board. And so, I do have to press a bit harder to get it to actually come up on this big old nose that it has. But once you get it up there, it's really up there. So it's kind of an interesting flex pattern to get used to. And once you get used to it, then you can kind of use it to your advantage. Talk about the edge hold, because this board has, honestly, I felt like it was an incredible amount of edge hold. 3 positive camber zones. It did have a really nice edge hold out there this morning in some refrozen spring snow. We got up there before it was softened up, and I didn't have a problem holding an edge up there. It's really nice and reliable that way. That being said, it's also very grippy. And so when I was up there on harder snow, it was a lot more grippy as far as it held its edge longer than I expected it to. So again, it goes back to the personality, feels a bit more like that true camber board, where I did feel like the contact points were well outside of my feet when I was engaging the edge. And then when they're not weighted, then it feels a bit more playful, and especially in softer snow, it also does. So I felt it was very reliable in icy terrain. Every once in a while, though, I do wish it had a little bit of extra early rise, let's say, because sometimes I wanted it to release a little earlier and then it didn't. The cool part about this is, yeah, it's a medium flex, but it felt very stable. I felt like I could ride it pretty quickly and it felt reliable and stable and not shaky or like bumpy at all. But also I'm a lighter weight rider, so if you're a little bit on the heavier side, it'll probably gear a little bit more towards a medium flex board. But for me, it felt really stable for my weight and the speeds that I was taking it at. In steeps, you know, this is definitely kind of my style of snowboard, where I like to ride switch a lot. I like to ride switch all mountain. I like to ride switch in the steeps and the bumps and stuff like that. And I love that it's an asymmetrical twin that's also pretty stable. Felt really great on the steeps, very reliable, definitely can put an edge in. Again, I do wish it was a little bit more feathery on the edge engagement and disengagement from the uphill to the downhill edge. Sometimes it held on a bit longer than I was expecting, but I do feel like that was just a learning curve thing, and if I rode it a bit more, then I would get used to exactly where those contact points were. Off piste, it was very reliable. It's snappy and energetic, and so if you weight the board correctly, it will perform correctly for you, and it can be very precise. You know, so pretty good for off piste. Obviously, it's a twin, so if you get into some deeper snow, it's probably not going to be super fun. But it does have a rather wide nose, and so if it does get, you know, you see a foot of snow or under, it's going to hold up fine, especially with, you know, it's not that true camber diver, so it does have a little bit of play when the snow gets deeper, and it will help float a little bit. But, you know, more for that average snow condition day to like a little bit of fresh snow, and then maybe wanting to trade out if you're seeing like a serious powder day. So for powder, you know, it is an asymmetrical twin. You can set it back a little bit. As far as like if you ride it centered, it's going to be the same on the nose and the tail. And you do have a little bit of play to get a little bit of setback float in powder. So yeah, pretty fun to maneuver off piste in all types of terrain and conditions on the mountain. It's quick to turn. And so, you know, edge to edge is pretty easy. You can make tighter turns. You can do some edge wiggly things and it stays stable and reliable, and you can kind of like maneuver very quickly. So if you're going through tight trees or little moguls and stuff like that, it'll do well there. For carving on Groomers, it definitely can carve. You know, it has 3 positive camber zones. And even though the overall arc, like if we're going to look at the board like this as an arc, it's in the shape of a reverse camber board, so it kind of arcs this way. But when you're weighted, it turns into a pretty grippy camber profile. And I felt like when I was carving it and I was creating that higher edge angle, it got up on edge nicely, it held its line nicely. And sometimes, if you carve, you can actually see all 3 camber lines going through the snow, which is pretty interesting. So carving, pretty fun to carve. It's not like a really stiff board, you know, it's not a tapered board, it's not directional, so it's not a carving specialist, but it's definitely fun to do, and it can hold a nice edge, and it's pretty stable. And you have the asymmetrical heel side as well, so it helps improve the heel side carve. You know, and aside from that, as an overall kind of groomer rider, because it's a true twin and it's pretty nimble and snappy, it's fun to do like little playful side hits. It's fun to do a little bit of exploring. It's not really the straight liner type board. I felt like this board kind of wanted to go a little bit, you know, what's over there, and turn a bit. So enough to dabble all mountain. It definitely has that all mountain twin, all mountain freestyle personality to it, where it's not a super flexible park board, but you can take it and explore the mountain in a freestyle way. Speaking of freestyle, take this down to the park. I really liked the camber profile and the flex of this board for jumps. I didn't feel like I had to go super fast to get some energy out of it, and I didn't feel like I had to put a lot of energy into the board to get a lot of pop out of it. So on jumps, it had a super nice stable snap off of the lip, and it felt nice and stable in the air and in the landing as well. It felt reliable and kind of consistent, whereas I didn't have to guess. I like could feel exactly when I wanted to pop, and it didn't take me that long to get used to it. Again, asymmetrical twin, good for spinning, good for switch tricks, good for taking off switch, landing switch, you know, whatever you want to do. It's nimble enough and it's solid enough to take off of definitely some medium-sized jumps and feel good about it. For jibs, it was, even though for me, it was stiffer feeling than I expected, especially with like the medium flex, but I think that triple camber kind of adds a bit of stiffness to it. It still felt good for me on jibs, and it felt maneuverable and nimble. Jumping on skate style onto a rail or tube, it felt fine. Box, I was able to pivot on the box and not feel any catch or anything, you know, board slides and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, pretty fun in the park as well. It's kind of in between the realm of like beginner park zone up to like intermediate advanced park. You know, it's not going to punish you a whole lot if you are just getting into park and you want to kind of learn it. Definitely not a super beginner board, but I think it's friendly enough that you could get away with it if you don't have a ton of developed park skills yet. Pretty decent in the pipe as well, just because it has that really nice edge hold and it is pretty stable. And the Asym on the heel side, honestly, I feel like helps a lot going up the heel side wall, because that's, I don't know about you, but that's definitely my weakest side in the pipe, and I liked knowing that I had a little bit of extra grip on that heel edge as well. As far as butters go, it's not a super buttery board, even though, again, if we look at it this way, it looks like a rocker board. I felt like I had to go further than I normally have to go with a snowboard in order to get it to butter, to get up on this spoon. But once it's up here, it's super playful, and it just like, whoop, it goes right. In fact, the first time I was kind of testing out where the flex zones were, I looped out a couple times because I was like, whoa, that happened really fast. Because you'd be like leaning, waiting, and then all of a sudden you're up on the nose or the tail. So it is butterable, but it's not one that you can just like lean into super quickly unless you're a heavier weighted rider, and then you have a little bit more, you know, torque to bend the board with. But yeah, overall pretty fun board. It is quick edge to edge. It has a really good edge hold on ice. Pretty fun, interesting asymmetrical twin. You can take in the park or all mountain and have a little bit of that kind of twin personality ride wherever you want it to be. So yeah, that is a look at the Never Summer Breezy Rider in a 145. If you're looking for the complete ride up and review, you can head over to thegoodride.com to check it out.